Hi everyone, this is Laura from Ross River Public Library, and this is our virtual session for our Growing with Gardens Club. If you didn't see our post a few days ago and you want to participate today with some supplies, you can go ahead and take this time to gather your garden journals. If you don't have a garden journal, you can just use a piece of paper or an empty notebook. So these are your garden journals. You can also get some cotton swabs, 2 cupcake liners or 2 small bowls, and 2 colors of powder such as coffee grounds, drink mix, or cornmeal, sugar, stuff like that. And we're going to be using those later today for our experiment, so you can work along with me. So today we're going to be starting with a short poem, and as I read this, try to guess what we're going to be learning about today. This poem is called Busy Bugs, and it's written by James Carter. Out in the garden, look down low, see all the busy bugs come and go. Wriggly bugs that can't keep still, tiny bugs that build a hill, shiny bugs that feed on leaves, spotty bugs that climb up trees. Out in the garden. Noisy bugs that live in grass, bouncy bugs that move so fast, crawly bugs that hide in sand, tickly bugs that like your hand, out in the garden. So, do you have any guesses about what we'll be learning about today? If you guys guessed bugs, then you're absolutely right. We're going to be learning about bugs today because bugs are so important. They have so many roles to play. They're like the little workers that work behind the scenes in our gardens and in nature. There are so many bugs, and there's too many bugs to learn about today. We don't have time. So we're going to focus on a few specific bugs. Those bugs are called pollinators, and pollinators are our stars for the day. But before we get into that, I'm going to update you on our plants. So I'm going to rotate this, see if I can. Great. Okay, so we're here with our plants, and they're definitely growing and growing. So we have our tomato over here. I think that's the tallest one. If you want any of the measurements, just let me know in the comments, and I'll measure them for you if you're tracking them in your garden journal. We have peppers, basil, broccoli's over here. And then if we go further over, we have cosmos, zinnias, oregano. Back there are marigolds, some more tomato plants. So we have a lot going on with our plants right now. They're all in bigger pots, so they have lots of room to grow, and they're getting ready to go out in the garden soon. So let's learn about our pollinators, because pollinators will really play a role in the growth of our plants. So what are pollinators? Do you guys know anything about pollinators? Well, to know about pollinators, first we need to know about pollination. What do you guys know about pollination? So pollination is basically the transfer of pollen from one plant to the next plant. So pollination is super important because pollination is necessary for plants to reproduce. So we want our plants to be able to make more plants later. So they use pollen to create seeds and fruit so they can reproduce. So let's get a little bit of a better idea what this actually looks like. So here's this picture. It's from this book called The Reason for a Flower by Ruth Heller. But here's our picture that we can look at. So pollen is transferred from the stigma on one plant. The stigma is this long, kind of rectangular oval shape that's kind of orange here. So, oh, I'm so sorry. The stigma is this. Sorry, I get confused too. Okay, so the anther. All right, the anther produces the pollen, and it needs to be transferred to the stigma. And the stigma is this little green spot on top of this long green piece. So these are parts of the flower. So pollen is transferred from the anther to the stigma here. Some plants self-pollinate. So that means that they can move the pollen on their own from the anther to the stigma. But most plants require cross-pollination, which means that they need something, either a creature or the wind, to move the pollen from one plant, the anther, to another plant and land on the stigma. So there are a few ways that pollination can happen. Like I said, the wind can carry pollen and it might land on the stigma, or pollinators carry the pollen from the anther to the stigma, and this is how most plants are pollinated. So, what are pollinators? Can you name a few pollinators? If you're thinking bees, then you're absolutely right. Bees are like the biggest pollinator. They do a lot of pollination and we rely on them for a lot of our food. So pollinators can be bees, butterflies, hummingbirds, flies, moths, beetles, and even bats. So what happens is these creatures eat pollen that plants produce. They eat pollen and they eat nectar. So they go into the flower and they're collecting pollen and nectar and they're eating it. And as they're around in there, pollen sticks to them. So then they move on to their next flower and they start gathering and eating, and the pollen that stuck to them kind of rubs off on that flower. And that is how pollen moves from one flower to the next. So imagine there's a huge tub of ice cream and you dive into it and you're eating the ice cream and you're collecting it, and what happens? Ice cream gets all over you. And then you dive into another flavor of ice cream and you start eating and collecting it, and what happens? Those ice creams mix. So just imagine it kind of like that. So we're going to try to see how pollination works with a little experiment. So if you gathered those supplies, get them out now. So I have 2 cupcake liners. One has coffee grounds in it, if you can see that, and the other has, I believe this is cornmeal. No, it's wheat germ. I just had that in my cupboard. Okay, so here's your little cotton swab. So you're gonna take your cotton swab. If you want to do this later and try it a different way, you can make a bug. So this is a popsicle stick with a few pom-poms glued onto it with hot glue, and then there's a little antenna with a pipe cleaner. So you can try both ways and see what works better. So this is our pollinator, and it's flying through the sky, and it's going to land in this flower. And now it's collecting, and it's moving around, and what happened? That's the pollen, and it got all over the pollinator. It's going to move to the next flower, and it's going to move around. And now what happened? It gathered pollen from that plant, and let's go back into the other plant. And keep going back and forth as the pollinators move around. What's happening? What do you think is happening? If you can see this, it's starting to mix. See that? So pollen was successfully transferred from one plant to the next. There's some coffee in there. You can try it with your bug too. It gets down in that plant, and look, it's all over the bug. And so let's go into the next plant, and the pollen stuck to it. And now those plants are pollinated. So you can use your garden journals with this, and you can track your experiment. You can talk about your prediction. What do you think is going to happen? What you do, like your process, you move it from one to the next, and your results. You can draw a picture or write something about what happened, like the powders mixed. And then you talk about how you would do it differently. So try it a couple times. You can try it with little bugs, bigger bugs, and you can see what happens. So that's kind of a demonstration of what pollination looks like and how it works. All right, so why is pollination important? Do you guys know? Well, like I said, without pollination, plants can't reproduce. So did you guys know that 1 out of every 3 bites that you take is made possible by a pollinator? So that's a lot of our food. A lot of our food is dependent on those pollinators moving pollen between plants. We couldn't grow all of our food without them. All bugs are important. We can thank bugs for so many things. They do so much for us. in our gardens and in our world in nature. So let's look at some of the bugs that we might see in our gardens and outside. As I go through this, you can maybe think about what bugs you've seen. If you've seen the bugs in this book, or if you've seen other types of bugs, you can comment with the bugs that you've seen this spring, maybe your favorite bugs. This book is called Butterfly, Butterfly, a Book of Colors. This is written by Petr Horacek, and he also illustrated the book. Here's a few bugs. What do you see here? Let's see if we're going to read about those bugs in this book. One day, Lucy saw a beautiful butterfly. Where's the butterfly? She played with it and chased it all around the garden. There she goes. The next day, Lucy couldn't find the butterfly anywhere. Where did it go? But she did find a pink earthworm wriggling along the ground, and a brown spider busy spinning her web. Then Lucy discovered a green beetle and a family of very spotty, what are those? Red ladybugs scurrying around. She saw a snail with an orange shell slithering. That was a tongue twister. 3 purple caterpillars munching on a leaf. A shimmering blue dragonfly. And a yellow bee with a stripe buzzing about. There's our bee. Wonder if it's off to gather some pollen and nectar. But Lucy didn't see the butterfly anywhere. She looked and looked. Lucy lay down in the cool grass to wait. Then, high in the sky, what do you think she sees in the sky? What is that? Is that our butterfly? There it was, her colorful, beautiful butterfly flying through the sky. Those really colored butterflies are so easy to spot because they're so bright and beautiful. Insects are so amazing. All of these insects in this book are so important. There are so many all around us. We definitely want to attract butterflies and bees to our garden and our yards, not only so they can pollinate our plants, but also so that we can help them, providing them food and safe places to be. There are a lot of cool things that you can do for pollinators. I'm going to list kind acts that you can do for pollinators that you can work on at home. The first one I'm going to show you is a butterfly feeder, because we just read about our beautiful butterfly. So you can do a butterfly feeder a bunch of different ways, but this is how I made mine. So I used a recycled plastic lid, and I punched holes in the lid. You might want to get an adult to help you with that. And then I tied string. So there's 4 holes, 4 pieces of string, so that it can hang outside like that, okay? And then you can do 2 things. You can either put fresh fruit on your butterfly feeder. You can use overripe fruit. Butterflies really like that. So bananas, strawberries, oranges, stuff like that. Or you can make a butterfly drink syrup thing, which is 9 parts of boiling water and 1 part sugar. So you mix that together, let it dissolve, and then let it cool. And then you can take a sponge and soak the sponge in that mixture and put it on your plate. You can even pour a little bit of the mixture around it. And then the butterflies will come and start to drink, and they'll be really happy. So that's how you make a butterfly feeder. You can also make a butterfly/bee, both butterflies and bees will use this, puddle to put in your garden. So this is the one I made. So basically this is just a flower pot tray. You can use something like this or something else you have that looks like this with like a edge around the side. And you put in it some stones. I use stones. You can use marbles, but I didn't have any marbles or colored glass stones here, so I used regular stones. But those bright colors will attract the butterflies and bees. So once you put all of your pebbles, stones, marbles in there, you fill it about halfway up with water. And the important thing about this is you want to make sure that there are stones or marbles that are higher where the bees and the butterflies can land and not get wet, because you don't want them to get hurt or anything. They just need to land on something dry and then be able to drink the water in the bottom. So if you can see that there's water in there, I don't want to tip it because it'll spill. So that's how you make a butterfly and bee puddle to put out in your garden. You can put it on top of something so that they can easily get to it, like on top of a flower pot or something like that. Another kind action for pollinators is planting pollinator-friendly plants. So these plants produce nectar, which the pollinators eat, and that will help them. So I'm going to, after this video is done, I'm going to post a list of pollinator-friendly plants that are native to this area that you can plant in your garden to help the pollinators. I'll post it in the comments. Another kind action is making a bee or insect house. So this is how you make a bee or insect house. So I used just a tin can. You can use a glass can or a water bottle with the top cut off, anything like this. And then all you do is take like cardstock or light cardboard, just like kind of a heavier paper, and you roll up the pieces into little circles and tubes. I used a pencil and I kind of rolled it with the pencil, and then you put a little piece of tape to secure it, and then you just fill the container with them, and you can make them different sizes. And bees and insects will be able to build homes in there. You can put it in your garden, you can hang it from something, or you can just nestle it somewhere in your yard. Another kind thing for pollinators is just leaving some nesting areas for bees in your yard, such as planters or barrels with soil or sand, or just like leaf litter or brush piles. And then the bees will be able to find a home and be safe. Another good thing is not using pesticides, because pesticides will harm pollinators. And buying local organic honey that will support the beekeepers and the bees in your area. Another kind and fun thing to do for pollinators is going on a pollinator scavenger hunt. So this is where you get your garden journal. You can make this on your own. So here's my scavenger hunt. So I just called it Pollinator Scavenger Hunt. And then I just did 6. You can do more. But I have bee, butterfly, fly, hummingbird, flowers, and moth. So that's my scavenger hunt. And then I put circles next to them so that I can draw them when I find them. So this is fun because you can start to notice the pollinators in your yard and in your garden, and so that you're able to appreciate them and take care of them. Another kind thing, very kind thing to do for pollinators is spread the word. So if you tell someone else about how important pollinators are, like your family and your friends, it'll help them, because people will know that sometimes people can be afraid of bees, but people will know that bees are really important and that we rely on them for our food. So tomorrow, this is really exciting. Tomorrow is World Bee Day. So people are appreciating and celebrating bees all around the world, and you can be part of that. So you can do any of those things that I just listed, and you can throw a party at home for bees. You can do whatever you want to celebrate, make some crafts. You can also do this really fun thing. You can become part of the Bumblebee Watch. So the Bumblebee Watch is a website that you can go on and sign up for the Bumblebee Watch, and you can submit your sightings of bumblebees around your yard and your neighborhood and your garden. So you can take pictures of your bumblebees and then put those on the website. And what happens is that helps scientists know the population of bumblebees in certain areas. So you can contribute to helping scientists, and you can contribute to helping bumblebees be protected and for the scientists to know more about how to help them. So I will also put that link in the comments, and you can join the Bumblebee Watch and help those bumblebees out. So let us know if you do any of these things tomorrow to celebrate for World Bee Day. You can tag us or just say in the comments what you did to celebrate or what you plan to do to celebrate. We would love to know. We're going to finish out our session today with a little short insect poem. This is called Insect, and it's written by Tony Mitten. Inspect an insect, and you'll see how perfect it can be. Listen and hear the tiny song it sings as bits of rainbow glisten on its wings. This teaches us to inspect, listen, and hear, and notice the pollinators and the bugs in our yard and garden. Care for them and be gentle with them. Thank you for supporting the library and being part of our garden club, and I look forward to seeing you guys next time. Bye.